the Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery.
All right, we're back with another episode of the Primitive Patterns Podcast. We got Scott McIntosh on today. Scott's an amazing dude. I actually did some personal coaching with him myself, and just a few calls that really helped me big time in kind of my path as a young man. And I've followed his work on Instagram and just seen what he's putting out in the world. So we thought it would be an amazing guest to have on today. So Scotty, I'll just have you introduce yourself, what your life work and passion is about, and then we'll just go from there.
Epic, bro. Yeah, it was a pleasure doing work together. What I do is, and where I'm from, I'm obviously from Australia in Byron Bay. And what I do is I try and help young men create alignment in their life through physical, mental, and spiritual practices, and try to help them gain a sense of clarity and a deeper understanding of how to work towards like developing their purpose and allowing it to unfold without resistance and struggle. So that's what I do. I'd say I like to help men create efficiency in moving towards their purpose, and doing that with an understanding of universal law and the way the world moves, so that we can understand the laws behind why things happen. And I think when we understand why things happen, it takes us out of victimhood and straight into creativity. And I think when we're creating our lives, that is, I guess, the ultimate expression of us and God. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, well, going off that, I would like to just for you to go a little deeper on like what universal law is and the way that you actually apply that to coaching practices and helping people find purpose and alignment.
Yeah, good question. So I love the universal laws from the book, the Kybalion. So for example, mentalism is law number 1. And so sitting down with someone who potentially might be not in the place they think they should be in their life, I help to gain an understanding of what their dominant thoughts are. Okay, so I believe that the universe is a big mind, and we're all connected to that mind through thoughts, through electrical signals. Now, I know that the quality of our life will depend on the quality of our thoughts. So understanding that the universe is mental, first and foremost, we need to start identifying what we're thinking about. So I think you boys might know this, but 90% of our thoughts are the same thoughts that we had yesterday. So nothing's really going to change on the day-to-day unless you consciously choose thoughts that you would like to implement. So I like to get men to start thinking constantly about where they want to end up. And that includes using the principle of polarity to understand that you can use the polar opposite thought to create the outcome of your desire rather than something that you don't want to unfold or you don't want to happen. Because what you find is through working with lots of young men, I find most people think about what they don't want to happen rather than what they do want to happen. So you can use mentalism to create new thoughts, and then you can use polarity to keep those thoughts in check. And then you can drop down to the next principle of correspondence, and you can understand that as within, so without, as above, so below. The way you're internally feeling is creating your external experience, and the experience you're having on earth is having an effect in heaven and vice versa. So it's just helping guys to move through life with a little bit more awareness on what's going on and how the way they're thinking and feeling is having a direct correlation on their life.
Yeah, and within your own life, like, can you think of a time when you weren't using these principles, and then a time when you started to adopt them more into your life, and like what were the changes that you noticed kind of right away once you started to apply these things to your own life?
Well, yeah, I think like all of us, I went through like extreme emotions of like guilt and shame, growing up in an extremely religious household, and then navigating away from that. It leaves you with a deep sense of suffering. So I think in my life, I suffered immensely emotionally and internally. And that started to reflect outwardly because the thoughts I was having about myself were destructive, and they were creating a destructive reality, whether that be in my business failing, my relationships failing, my personal health going down the drain. And that suffering led me on a path to want to discover. And I think that suffering led me to a place where I started to take ownership. And this is where the switch happens in everyone's life, is when you put your hand up and you say, I'm the common theme in my own life, and I'm creating my own suffering. And every situation, person, or experience that I have encountered is because I've asked it to come in here for some reason. And then when I stepped into that power, when you step out of victimhood into creativity, which is always the tipping point, and you're willing to understand that you create all the pain, all the bliss, all the suffering, and all the ecstasy in your life, I have gone to moments where you step out of victimhood and you go into ultimate creativity. And that's very empowering because you get to own your wins, and you understand that everything good in your life is a product of you, and everything bad in your life is a product of what you've brought into it. But to go a step deeper on all of that is, I don't necessarily think that anything in your life is a negative. I just believe that all of us are drawing in the exact people, places, and circumstances in order for our soul to transcend. So I think the pain's great. If I see a young man suffering, I always think he must have some type of solid soul, because his soul is yearning to evolve, and those feelings are sending him down the right path. So yeah,
and I know for me, that's completely true. Like the times that I've felt the worst have also been the times that have pushed me to evolve in a new way, or to break free from certain relationships or ways of being. Because as a young guy that does want a lot out of life, and like healthy family, healthy business, I want adventure, I want all of those things. When I'm doing things or being around people that are bringing my vibration down, I do start to feel inner angst, and I don't feel good about myself. And it's almost a knowing of like, dude, you need to fuck off and move away from this stuff, because it's dragging everything you're working towards in that coherent state. It's just taking away from it. Yeah,
man. Spot on. That's what I would say. That's disease. It's dis-ease. And I think when we move to a state of ease in our life, that's getting in unison with the soul. Now, when I say ease, I don't mean like it's easy and you avoid challenge, but I believe our soul's always talking to us in subtle ways, and that frustration that most men experience and that angst, like you said, it's like your soul is gently nudging you and telling you, hey, you're not in the right place, and I'm going to keep sending you these messages until you do something about it. And I believe the moment you step into your purpose, life doesn't get any easier, it gets harder, but the soul stops resisting what you're doing. So it's like you still got to show up to work, you still got to train, it's still hard, but there's a belief knowing that you're in the right place, and that brings a sense of ease over your life. And I think when you get in connection with those messages and you get clear on that relationship between hard work but also flow and purpose, that is a sweet spot to be in as a man.
So another question going off of that I'll give to you. how do you balance between surrendering and being disciplined? Like, where do you find balance in your life where you feel you're surrendering and you're in flow, but you also feel in a way that you're disciplined and you're pushing, but with ease, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, fully, man. It's honestly, for me, it's a day-to-day battle, because like I'm 36 now, and oftentimes the stuff I want to do with my body, my mind says yes and the body says no. And I think for me now, it's constantly recognizing what your body's asking it needs, and how can you meet those needs in the best possible way each day. And it requires balance, because like you don't need to approach something at 36 the same way you did at 23. So for me, it's showing up like, you know, I really want to get the most out of my body, but it's going to mean, all right, on any given day, I'm going to wake up and feel sore. Do I need to prove myself that I've got discipline? It's like, I already know that I'm a disciplined man. And sometimes I ask myself, do I have a complex with constantly trying to prove that I have discipline? And that's when you, because you're older, you go into another layer and you go, well, no, I don't think the issue here is a lack of discipline. I think the issue here is a lack of honesty to recognize where I'm at. And I think that balance comes with age. And I think that balance comes by taking it too far, and then you recognize where that edge is. But yeah, I'm not into the whole punishing myself anymore, because I feel as though I've got nothing left to prove. I've many times taken my body to its brink, and now for me, I recognize that I can get a lot more by stepping into that feminine energy, perhaps turning off my phone and going for a long walk in nature and a swim, and perhaps waking up in the morning and recognizing that I don't feel like reading and writing. I just feel like going and sitting at a cafe and just people watching. And some days I don't feel like chasing money and chasing my business. I realize that's not what I need. I need to get on the shrooms and go for a day in nature. So like I said, man, for me, it's age dependent. I feel like all men step into this point where you just go, I need to step out of the warrior and into the wise man a little bit. And I think that's where you find the balance. And I'm sure you guys are going to you're in your warrior stage now, but you will get to a point where you're like, I can't show up to life at 35 the same way that I did at 25, and that's okay, because you can lean more into your mind to get more out of your body. Whereas when you're in your 20s, you don't know how to get much out of your mind, so the only vehicle that you've got is your body. Whereas when you get older, you can start to use the two to complement each other a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I would like, going back to how you said about balance, like you need to learn how to find that. And I would almost not argue, but state that for me, it's easy for me to push myself physically. Like, it's not, when I wake up in the morning, if I know I have a hard workout to do or something hard physically to do, it's easy for me. I find that fun. And so discipline for me, I've found, is not necessarily doing those hard things every day. It's actually stopping myself from doing those hard things every single day. Because like you said, if I wake up and I'm being honest with myself and I take an honest look inward and I see how I feel and what my body is actually going to react well to that day, oftentimes it's probably not the massive stressor that I genuinely want to place on it, because I get fulfillment and enjoyment out of that. And so for me, and even with clients that I coach at the gym, a lot of the time it's the honesty of, maybe I shouldn't push this hard today, actually shows the discipline, as opposed to just, going in there and hitting a hard workout, because that shit's easy especially for young guys like us, right? Like that's the easy part. Sometimes the hard part is taking that step back, going inward and telling yourself you need a break.
Man, I couldn't agree more. It's And why we want to get into our body and punish ourselves so hard is it's because we can avoid the mind in the body. And sometimes when you slow down, you've got to start to face everything that's going on in your mind. And it's so much easier just to push it to the side and be like, oh, I'm just going to flog myself at the gym or do a hard workout and then I can escape. So I definitely feel like young men use discipline sometime as escapism, because it is a form of escapism to constantly having to be in your body and avoid the noise in the mind. But like you said,
which can also be, I was going to say, which could also be a common theme for people in their career path, right? Like it's easy to be like, well, you know what, I'm going to put my head down, keep grinding, because that's going to block out the internal noise that I have in my mind, like maybe it's unease or whatever it is. So I'm just going to keep my head down. I'm going to keep grinding because I'm good at that and I've done that for so long. And that's almost my escape.
Oh, spot on. It's we're all in some form of escapism, whether we like to admit it or not. It's that's why silence it's the loudest noise. Like just being alone is one of the ultimate forms of human suffering. Putting someone in isolation or doing a Vipassana or doing an ayahuasca, it's facing the self, and facing the self is really hard on the mental plane. And I agree with you, man. I find it a lot easier to face myself physically than I do mentally. But a work in progress, eh?
For sure. One thing you brought up there, and let's just touch on it a bit, is I want to know what your beliefs are when it comes to psychedelics and medicines, when you think they can help people and when you think they can actually be very destructive.
That's a really good question, man. I'm in two minds about plant medicines. I've done a lot of mushrooms. I've done some plant medicine, some ceremonies, and I do think they have their time and their place, but they tend to attract a type of crowd that's on a never-ending healing journey. And what I would say to young men is like, go and do your ayahuasca retreat and your San Pedro or your mushrooms, but like get strong, clean your room, clean your car, have a healthy relationship with your partner, establish your foundation first, because nothing's going to substitute like the day-to-day grind. Like you're going to chop wood and carry water before your ayahuasca, and you're going to chop wood and carry water after it. And where I think young men get stuck is like, I have a client at the moment who I'm working with, and in my opinion, he was doing really well. He was smashing his program. He was beginning his coaching business. He was training his Muay Thai. He was in a relationship with his partner. Obviously, like all of us, the relationship wasn't perfect, but she seemed like a pretty solid girl. Anyway, he went to the ayahuasca retreat and he's like, I just realized, man, I've just got to mix up my whole life. I've got to change everything. Like I've got to break up with my girlfriend and I've got to move to the Amazon and start facilitating this for other young men. And in my mind, I'm looking at him and I'm like, all right, that's like fair enough. I don't want to diminish your journey. And I'm sure it was ultimately profound and you saw everything and you had an amazing experience. But like, it can get people to throw logic to the wind and just live based on a fleeting experience. And the experience passes and the feelings fade. And then quite often men make big decisions based on a fleeting feeling or a fleeting experience, and then they're left in pieces trying to put it all together and then jump back into their ayahuasca experience for more clarity, and it causes the same thing. Because quite often when you do these plant medicines, they all take you to the realization that there's nothing left but pure love. And all of the system that we're living in, it's just complete nonsense, okay? And a lot of it's truth, but none of us are escaping the matrix entirely and coming out alive. So I just think they have their time and place, but they are an experience. And I don't think you should base every decision in your life based off an ayahuasca experience or you're going to get sent down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what you said there that I think should be a really strong message to young men or anyone in general is it is the day-to-day things that mean the most. Like, you know, you can have that experience. It can be profound. You can feel that universal love or that connection to something that's so much greater than you are. But at the end of the day, you still got to come home and clean your toilet and go to the gym and cook a meal. So you have to, I think an important message is get your day-to-day principles and things that you live by established. And then if you want to go there to maybe help clear some energy or get a little more clear on what it is you want out of life, sure. But you can't just be the journeyman that's going one after another and not changing anything ever.
Yeah, I agree, bro. They're, like I said, they're very powerful, but for me, the 99% is your daily routines. But one thing I would say about plant medicines is I find all of our minds work on a loop, and the loop is like a thinking and feeling loop. And that's extremely like frustrating to get stuck in if the loop is creating like a negative affirmation pattern. But the powerful thing about psychedelics is that like often when you do them, they're the only thing that breaks the loop for long enough to create a long-lasting change. So for me, I just reckon they're just circuit breakers. And there's nothing better than a good circuit breaker when you're in a bad thinking, feeling loop. And do a big trip and just say you're tripping for 12 hours. That 12 hours for me is like, I imagine my brain with all the neuro pathways in them being very rigid. And like you guys would have heard, apparently our neuro pathways, they don't actually get mentally stronger, but they actually create like a physical depth to them. I like to imagine a big plant medicine journey as like leveling out the road again. So there's no ruts, there's no pathways. So it's just a little bit of a reset. So that's how I like to think of them, just a reset. And that's it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I mean, even for myself, I'm sure Luke would say the same thing. I'll speak for myself personally. I can't say I'm overly educated on the science behind psychedelics and the power that they have neurologically, but I have felt what they can do in multiple aspects. And I think that is exactly what I've gotten out of it. It's been an amazing break, an amazing experience where I've been able to come together with family or people that I love and share the experience and get things out of it. But then you start to integrate back into real life, and it may be super powerful that day or the week following, but eventually you're going to fall back into what was pre-existing in your life prior to that experience. And so getting your values straight, getting your daily patterns straight is essential for young men, for anybody, in my opinion. And I don't have too much experience, but from my experience, that's definitely what I've gotten out of it, is like, get your shit straight. It's an amazing experience, but in the same breath, you're gonna resort back to what you already know.
Spot on, man. It's just an experience. That's all it is. You know what I mean? It's like you have the best meal ever, and you're talking about it for a couple of days, and then 4 days goes by, you can't even remember what it tasted like. Like it's just everything in this life is just fleeting. It's passing by. So I think definitely, like you said, do them. They're great. They can be a great tool, but like, don't think that you're going to come out and like everything's going to be sweet and your life's just going to fall into place. It's just an experience. You're going to have to come back and just clean the toilet, like you said, do the basic shit.
That's it.
Face reality, you know?
So that actually leads into a good point that I wanted to ask you is, when it comes to living in the present moment and trying to spend as much time as possible within the now moment, what are the things that you do every day that allow you to feel more present and allow you to feel like you're existing in the moment you're actually in and not projecting ahead or thinking about the past?
Good question, man. That's something that I struggle with myself personally. I I think I've done quite well over the last couple of years in establishing my purpose and in my work and my business, because I lived for a few years in my head constantly thinking forward about where I am now. On the day-to-day, right now in my life, I have started to feel a deep sense of presence. And what I would say that I do is, I don't know, for me, I'm not that big on meditation, but for me, the ultimate thing is just breathing. Like, just while I'm driving, just 5 in, 5 out, 5 in, 5 out, and just getting a bit of a loop in my breathing. And for me, if I can just do that 3 to 4 times a day, that can just capture like an hour to 2 hours of presence after each breath. And I feel as though one of the ultimate ways to gain presence in your life and to live in the present moment is to have faith that you're in the right place. So I think if you can develop a strong sense of faith and just understand that, like, all right, and I practice this every day. I'll take my my iPad to a cafe and I'll sit down and I'll be having my coffee and someone will come up and have a conversation with me. In the past, I would notice that I would often struggle to be present in the conversation because I would feel as though I have to be working and this conversation is taking away from my work. But I started to see life a little bit differently over the last year, and I just started to say to myself, well, you know what? If this person's in front of me and I have faith that I'm always in the right place, I'm going to close this computer and I relinquish any feelings of needing to be somewhere else. And I don't care if we sit here for 4 hours. If they're here, they're meant to be here and I'm meant to be here, and that's okay. And I think for me, moving with that type of faith and stop that clinging to what I think I should be doing, and definitely waking up in the morning with stuff that I want to do, but also allowing flow in the day, my days end up being so much more productive and I live with such a deeper sense of happiness. Because I think when you can establish core values, establish discipline and principles, and have every intention to do them, but then not freak out if life changes the plans, I think for me, that's the ultimate way to stay present and also focused on future goals. So that's my mentality at the moment, is go about it, get the checklist out, but also have time for flow, have time for space, conversations, laughing. And if the surf's pumping, everything gets put on hold. It's no questions asked.
That's right.
So yeah, that's how I'm
and
living.
that's yeah, and that's I was gonna say, like, faith, but it has to be balanced with like honesty of work ethic, because you can't just have faith that you're in the right place, but you're not doing anything to actually suggest that you're in the right place.
Exactly.
Right? It's like manifestation with no work ethic backed by it. It's like, yeah, manifestation works, but you can't just sit on your couch all day and manifest a great life and then expect it to happen. And so like faith as to where you're at has to be balanced with like being honest with yourself about, am I doing the right things day to day? Do I have my core values set? And do I have the discipline to allow me to have that faith to know that I'm on the right path?
Yeah, man, exactly that. It's you need to create the environment for what you wish for to land. So it's putting yourself on the frequency for the things you want to be able to match your frequency and hit you. And laziness doesn't get you anywhere. You got to go for it, but you got to. I feel like, I don't know if you boys have read The Surrender Experiment, the book.
No, I haven't.
It's an amazing book. It's just about a young man who goes so deep into his yoga and meditation journey, and it works for him. But then he starts to freak out if he can't do his yoga or his meditation. And then he realized, like, this discipline is getting in the way of the flow of life. So what he started to do was he would show up to his discipline, but then you have to have a trust that if you're putting in the work, life's also going to try and meet you with people, places, and situations. So you got to allow space for everything that you're working to match you in an insane way that you can't comprehend. And I feel that's the balance between discipline and surrender, is just showing up and doing the work, and also recognizing that there's a force at play that's bigger than your control. And if you can relinquish some of that control, it's going to take you to where you need to be a lot quicker than if you tried to control.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think 100% true. And I know for me personally, that's still where I'm trying to develop, is more of that surrender. I'm very good at the discipline and the doing and making sure that I can be on it. But it's like, how do I allow myself the time and the space to let those things that I'm working so hard towards and trying to internally create actually come into my life, because I have the openness to accept them.
Spot on, bro.
And as a young man, I feel like that's going to be a struggle for any young man, right? It's like you're accepting that feminine side of you, like that surrender, that faith. And I'm sure we can all attest to that. Young men, like nose to the grindstone, that can be maybe the hardest part of the battle, right?
Spot on. And I always think like, so for me personally, I've had to battle with like rigidness. So, you know, I'd go a year without touching a glass of wine, or having one French fry, or like one ice cream. And what I realized is like sometimes the rigidness and the discipline actually drains your body far more than just allowing some flow. So for me, understanding that like it's healthier to have a burger with your friends and join in and laugh and have a couple of beers, that is less taxing on my body than constantly resisting the flow of life all the time. And I've recognized now that I don't have a complex with discipline, so don't need to keep working on my strengths and then neglecting my weaknesses, and that weakness is flow. So I think what I would suggest is, like for all young guys, is if you tend to be a little bit too disciplined, is to lean into your flow a little bit and allow yourself to live life while pushing hard, because we're all going to end up dead one day, and you're going to look back and be like, you know, I ran the Grand Canyon. I did all my workouts. I surfed every day. I got really jacked, but I never allowed myself to have a couple of beers and a burger with the boys and just have some fun. It's that's also taxing on the body, just being.
Definitely. And I would say for me, that is like, and we talked about that in our original coaching calls, and I still struggle with that, is like, it's hard for me to like have those beers and do those things, but I know that it would be a net positive to let go a little bit more. And I'm finding ways to do that, but it's still a work in progress to like let go of the rigidity and still have the faith. But I think, like you said, it's a very normal thing as a young dude to work through.
And you got to be grateful that, you know, that you're on that end of the spectrum as a young man too. Cause you know, you could be on the other end of the spectrum where there is no discipline. It is just burgers and beers with the boys all the time. And that's all it is. Right. So like much as like, yeah, we can all say like we need to improve on certain things. Everybody needs to improve on things. We need to be thankful that we are where we're at, and try to encourage people to follow the same path or find their path and follow it.
Agree, man. And, you know, I think one thing that I'm realizing is that the energy in which you do something is so much more powerful than what you're doing. So like if you're eating a meal and it doesn't hit all your macros and you're just having a couple of beers and a burger, if it's done in a place of love and gratitude and peace and acceptance, it's so amazing, it's beneficial. But if you're eating something and you're forcing the food down and you're not enjoying it and you're not tasting it and it's not an experience, that reaffirms a belief that you're more flesh than spirit. But as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize that like we're actually far more energy than we are matter. And that's why some healthy people wind up looking like trash at 45 and they run himself into the ground with long runs and rigid diets. And then you just got that dude who just surfs and drinks beer all day and he looks like 25 at 45. And it's because the energy in which he does things is so playful and so relaxed and free. And the rigidness has aged the healthy person. So I reckon just recognizing and having, like you guys said, that relationship with discipline, but also the discipline is being able to know when to take the foot off the gas. It could wind up being like your biggest advantage and probably be the like biggest pivotal point of happiness in your life.
Beautiful. Yeah, 100%. I'm going to ask one more question because we want to be respectful of your time here.
No worries.
Not question, but kind of just one thing that you had said to me on one of our coaching calls, and it really hit home for me. And I think for a lot of young men, it's something to think about, was you said the monk mode or marriage. When it comes to if you're looking to find like a partner that you really want to spend your life with, or someone that you truly want to fall in love with, just go into that a little bit, like why you would say that to a young man and kind of the value you see there.
I'm a massive believer in like not having casual sex and casual dating. Why I think that is we're energetic beings, like I spoke about before. And every time you take on someone's energy, you take on their set of problems. Every time you enter a woman, you dump all your shit in her and she dumps all her shit in you. Now, as a man, we've got enough shit going on in the background of our minds, our unconscious minds and our bodies. For me personally, I don't think there is any value in sleeping around as a man. I think it devalues your stocks, and I think it winds up being a massive distraction. And what I believe is the more people that you're talking to and sleeping with, it's just the more voices in your head. It's like when you jump on Netflix, you just start to get choice paralysis. There's so much to choose from, and you never really end up watching the right thing because you're always thinking that there's something else out there. But I believe when you sit down and you decide on what type of movie you're going to watch before you sit down to watch a movie, you go in there making a conscious choice. It saves time. It creates an inner sense of peace while you're in the experience because you've pre-decided to do the thing. And energetically, your energy's all in one place. Now for men, why I say marriage or monk mode is women chase men chasing their business, chasing their purpose, chasing their health. If you're doing the right things, you don't need to worry about finding the right woman. A woman is a byproduct of how you're living your life. But if you start to turn around and chase them, then you're diluted. You're diluted from your purpose, your energy, your sexual energy. And I don't even believe sexual energy should be called sexual energy. It's just creative energy. And every time you leak out creative energy into a project that you have no intention on doing life with, that's a part of your creative energy now put into a project that's not going to be finished. And that's what a relationship is, that is not going to go anywhere. It's just part of your being put into something that is, it's not doing anything. It's just, for me, it's a waste of your personal power. So I always tell the young men on my program, get in check. If you control what you put into your mouth and you can control where you put your dick, you are a master of a man. And yeah, you'll do well.
I totally agree. And that's like
brilliant, spot on. I say we just cut it there. That was a great way to end it. That was perfect.
Before we end it though, just I want you to just talk about your program a little bit, where guys can find you, how they can get involved, because I personally haven't done the full program. I've only done the coaching calls, but there was a ton of value there. So I can only imagine that scales exponentially within the 6 and 12 week programs I think that you're offering.
Yeah, bro. Epic. Well, my website is ourdailypurpose.com. You can find me on Insta at Scott D McIntosh _. And what I do with my programs is I have an outline of what I think people need to learn about. But obviously, like you guys would know in your personal training and your your gym that you guys have, every client comes to you and they're all completely different. And obviously, how you get the most out of someone is not pushing your program onto them, but really recognizing where they're at and meeting them where they're at. So for me, with the way I work is I like to have a couple of conversations with someone. And, for some guys, I'm like, I'm not going to go into universal law and spiritual practice. Let's begin by making the bed, buying some organic food and getting these 2 books under your belt. And then we'll talk. Some guys come to me, they've got a successful business, they've got over $1 million in the bank, they got the cars, they know what's up, they're ready to get straight into the deep work, but they can't seem to create a sense of physical, spiritual, and mental cleanliness in their body. So we're like, all right, we're going to skip step 1 to 5, and we're gonna jump on here. And then you got guys who are all in on the spiritual stuff. They understand everything, but they just lack the practical discipline to execute daily activities. So for me, it's assessing a person, praying over the person, taking that person into my mind and really trying to feel into what it is that they need that's going to make the biggest difference. And then I'll just make that a point of attention and we'll hammer it home until they're flowing, and then we approach the next thing. So, yeah.
One more question for you. Hard-hitting one. 2 books that you could suggest to any young man that's looking to read something.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I really like... I'm just trying to think for young men. I really like The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. That is an amazing book. And the title is not really what the book's about. It talks about, as a man, how you need to think, act, and feel in order to be a successful man, to be a great man. So that's a very basic book, but it's powerful. And a base level book that's also quite deep is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. That's an amazing book to help you grasp the power of your thoughts and feelings. So, and one more, I would go...
Bonus book, love it.
Bonus book, I'd go The Way of the Superior Man to help you understand the dynamics between the masculine and the feminine and how to step into like that positive masculine role.
Unreal.
Amazing.
Well, thank you, bro, for everything you do and put out there. Like for us, we really see how much you care and how you're doing it from an authentic place. And in the online space, sometimes that's hard to find. So just cheers to you and the work and the shit that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, man. We appreciate you.
Likewise, boys. Love seeing 3 brothers getting after it. There's nothing better than united brothers working towards a common goal. That's where it's at. So thanks for letting me be part of it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you, man.
The Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery.